German pilots first encountered the P-47 Thunderbolt in early 1943, and their first reaction was simple: laughter. The fighter looked enormous compared to anything else in the sky, too heavy to climb well, too bulky to maneuver, too slow to threaten a Bf-109 or an FW-190. To the Luftwaffe, the Thunderbolt looked like an engineering mistake, more like a flying oil tank than a precision fighter. They joked that the Americans had finally built a plane so overweight it couldn't dogfight even if it tried. But the first time a Thunderbolt dropped from high altitude and opened fire with 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns, all that laughter died instantly. German pilots realized too late that the P-47 was not designed to win a turn fight. It was designed to destroy anything it hit. The Thunderbolt was born from a desperate need. In early 1943, American bomber losses over Europe were reaching catastrophic levels. The P-38 Lightning struggled in the cold. The P-51 Mustang was still in early development, and the U.S. needed something that could escort bombers at altitude and fight off Germany's best interceptors. Republic Aviation had an answer: build the toughest, fastest diving, hardest-hitting fighter imaginable. It didn't need elegance, it didn't need to turn, it needed to survive, climb, and kill, so they built a monster, nearly 5 tons fully loaded, a massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 radial engine, armor plating around the cockpit, a turbo supercharger the size of a small suitcase, and the heaviest machine gun battery of any American fighter in the European theater: 8 Browning .50 caliber guns. The Thunderbolt was not designed to be pretty. It was designed to be unstoppable. German pilots didn't understand that. When they first engaged Thunderbolts, they tried to fight them like Spitfires or Mustangs. They expected a dogfight. But Thunderbolt pilots had already learned the aircraft's secret: altitude is power. The P-47 climbed high, above where German fighters were comfortable. Its turbo supercharger allowed it to maintain full engine performance even above 30,000 feet, while German engines began to lose power. The Thunderbolt turned high altitude into a weapon. Once above the enemy, the P-47 became something else entirely: a falling hammer. In a dive, the Thunderbolt was the fastest fighter in the European sky, faster than the Bf-109, faster than the FW-190, faster than anything Germany could field. American pilots would roll over, push the nose down, and watch the airspeed climb past 500 miles per hour. German fighters that tried to follow simply couldn't. They shook. They lost control. They backed off. The Thunderbolt just kept accelerating. And then came the firepower. 8 Browning .50s firing at once didn't just damage aircraft. They erased them. A half-second hit could tear a 109 in half or shred a 190's wing clean off. Luftwaffe pilots who survived engagements described the experience as being hit by a wall of metal. Many never even saw the P-47 that hit them. They only heard the impacts, felt their plane coming apart, and bailed out, if they were lucky. But what shocked the Luftwaffe most wasn't the P-47's firepower, it was its toughness. German pilots were used to killing American fighters with short, precise bursts. But the Thunderbolt absorbed hits that would destroy any other Allied aircraft. Stories circulated of P-47s returning to base with holes the size of fists, entire cylinders blown off, half-destroyed tails, and control surfaces barely hanging on. The radial engine was nearly impossible to kill. The armor protected the pilot from frontal shots, and the Thunderbolt's sheer size meant it could take damage no European fighter could survive. By mid-1943, German pilots stopped laughing. They started warning rookies, "Don't dive after Thunderbolts. Don't let them get above you. Don't get caught in their guns." But by then, it was too late. What truly changed the air war was how the Thunderbolt worked as an escort. Bombers needed protection at altitude, and the P-47 delivered exactly that. It climbed ahead of the bomber formations, positioned itself above them, and waited. German interceptors had no choice. They had to climb to reach the bombers. And when they did, the Thunderbolts pounced. They didn't turn. They didn't circle. They didn't play games. They struck from above with overwhelming speed and firepower, then zoomed away before the Luftwaffe could react. It was air dominance through momentum, not maneuvering. Bomber crews began to trust the Thunderbolt more than any other fighter. They called it the guardian angel. They watched P-47s dive past them at incredible speeds, guns blazing, slicing German fighters out of the sky in seconds. The psychological effect was huge. American bomber crews who once felt helpless now felt protected, and German pilots who once attacked in confident waves now hesitated, checking their altitude every few seconds to make sure a Thunderbolt wasn't about to fall on them like a steel meteor. But Europe wasn't the only place the P-47 proved itself. In the Pacific, its legend grew even larger. Japanese fighters like the Zero and Oscar were incredibly maneuverable, but fragile. The Thunderbolt didn't care about their agility. All it needed was one hit. A single burst from 8.50 caliber guns tore Japanese aircraft into pieces so violently that pilots described it as switching off the enemy. And the P-47's toughness made it nearly impossible for Japanese pilots to bring down. Light machine guns and cannon shells that would cripple other fighters barely scratched the Thunderbolt. Pilots said flying it felt like being wrapped in armor. Then came the mission that made the Thunderbolt infamous on the ground. With rocket rails, bombs, and endless belts of .50 caliber ammunition, the P-47 became one of the most feared ground attack aircraft of the war. It strafed convoys, destroyed tanks, shattered artillery positions, and wiped out entire supply lines. German soldiers called it the Jabba with the Thunder, while Japanese troops learned to run for cover the moment they heard its deep engine roar. The Thunderbolt didn't just dominate the sky, it crushed the battlefield beneath it. What made the P-47 extraordinary wasn't a single trait, it was the combination high altitude power, incredible dive speed, brutal firepower, legendary durability, and long-range impact. German pilots learned again and again that trying to fight a Thunderbolt on their terms was suicide. You couldn't catch it if it dove. You couldn't outclimb it at high altitude. You couldn't survive its guns. And you couldn't kill it fast enough to matter. By 1944, the jokes from 1943 were long gone. Luftwaffe veterans told new pilots, "If you see the Thunderbolt above you, you already lost." They respected it the way they respected the Mustang, but feared it in a different way. The Mustang could outthink them. The Lightning could outrange them. But the Thunderbolt, it could outhit anything. It was the brute force of American industry turned into a fighter. And the statistics proved it. Thunderbolt pilots claimed thousands of air victories, but even more astonishing were its ground attack numbers, tens of thousands of trucks, tanks, and vehicles destroyed, making it one of the most devastating multi-role fighters ever built. The Luftwaffe, already bleeding pilots and fuel, simply could not withstand the sustained pressure of an aircraft that could fight, dive, destroy, and return home full of new scars. In the end, the fighter Germans once mocked as too heavy became one of the most feared aircraft on either front. It wasn't built to impress. It wasn't built to dance. It was built to win through sheer force, resilience, and devastating firepower. When a Thunderbolt appeared above you, you weren't in a dogfight anymore. You were in the path of a fallen hammer. And once that hammer swung, there was nothing you could do to stop it.